Everyone, and welcome to Stuckwork. I have prepared another exciting topic for this video. It is about the beginnings of what we now call Christianity and what it has become over the centuries. Much of it may shock you, and you may not want to believe what I have to say because it may overturn much of what you have believed until now. But everything is based on the latest scientific findings, and you are welcome to research it all for yourself. This lecture was written by me and revised with ChatGPT. Since I produce these videos in German, English, and Swahili, you will unfortunately have to make do with a computer voice. I hope everything is understandable. Incidentally, the images are from ChatGPT and Grok. I wish you many enlightening moments with my lecture. Did you know that there were no Christians in the first century? That the church as we know it today has little to do with the original teachings of Jesus? In this video, I show you, with pictures and humor, new paths for all who are truly searching. My goal is to inspire you to marvel, reflect, and question what you believe, because it is not faith that liberates, but only the knowledge of the truth. Have you ever heard of a movement called The Way? No? No problem. Most people have never heard of it. Perhaps you have heard of the early Christians. That's exactly what I mean. But back then, they didn't call themselves Christians. You'll be amazed at how little they had to do with today's Christians. Who were the members? Quite simply, Jews who lived like Jews. They dutifully went to synagogue, celebrated Jewish festivals, and observed Jewish commandments. But then a teacher came along who wanted to radically change Judaism. We know him today as Jesus. To be perfectly clear, Jesus wanted to change Judaism, not be the mascot of a new religion. What were Jesus' teachings really like? Imagine, the first century, everything as usual, and suddenly this guy shows up, Jesus. People had no idea that he would later become known as a miracle worker, turning water into wine, lame people walking again. Back then, no one knew about that. He was just a teacher who acted and didn't just talk. And his message? Not believe in me or you are lost, but something quite radical. Love your neighbor, no matter who they are. Everyone is equal. Poor, rich, men, women, slaves, everyone is equal. Only deeds count, not faith. Those who help, share, and act justly. They lived and live according to these principles. Faith alone? That's not enough. Paul invented that later. The people back then? No concept of miracles, no divine logic. A man who heals the sick, supports the poor, and takes women seriously? Absolutely unusual. But they observed, marveled, and learned. That is precisely what made his teaching powerful. Actions instead of creeds, everyday life instead of fictional miracles. What values did the followers of the Way movement have? They were absolutely crazy about equality in the spirit of their teacher Jesus. And I mean that in the sense of radically crazy, whether Jew, Greek, man, woman, or slave. Everyone was equal. Women? Equal. Slaves? Equal. And one of the most impressive among them was also a woman, Mary Magdalene, strong, intelligent, active. She definitely deserves her own extra video. Jews and Greeks, as culturally compatible as fire and water, and slaves equal to free people. By the standards of the time, it was almost like a chicken suddenly ruling the Milky Way. But that was precisely part of their values. All people were equal. Origin, status, or gender did not matter. No wonder the establishment became nervous. Slaves in the movement. Oh yes, the members themselves were not slave owners. Firstly, because that would be about as logical as a vegan who is a butcher with heart and soul. Secondly, because most of them would not have had the money for it. The movement consisted of craftsmen, fishermen, day laborers, women, ex-slaves, people for whom even a chicken was considered a luxury item. Anyone who was rich and joined had to make a decision, either the movement or the slaves. Both together? Not compatible. How could that work in practice? Slaves had tasks outside the house, running errands, workshop stuff, shopping. No one tracked them like an ancient GPS. In the evenings, on market days or holidays, they were free to participate. Some members were freedmen and knew both worlds. Pretend you're buying vegetables. Just don't go back without vegetables. This allowed slaves to actually become part of the community, free on the inside, even if they were property on the outside. Was the path socialist or communist? Clearly not. No government, no coercive rules, no economic system. But they shared, helped, supported the poor, the sick, and strangers, and treated everyone equally. Social in the true sense. Voluntary, supportive, radically equal. Not according to modern ideologies, but out of faith, morality, and following Jesus. How are they organized? In short, chaotic but likable. No fixed structures, no hierarchies set in stone, each community different. What do they have in common? The principles of Jesus: love, equality, solidarity, no expensive churches, no preacher salaries, no bureaucratic madness. Today, one might say, a nonprofit organization with heart. They were more like house communities that met on various occasions, such as for dinner and discussion groups. As already mentioned, there were NO churches, temples, priests, etc. No one earned money with or from a movement. There were different roles in the movement. 1. Apostles. They were original eyewitnesses and were something like traveling reporters and storytellers. 2. Prophets. They were inspired, fiery, and the drama queens and kings of the movement, according to the motto, "Hey, look, this is important." 3. Teachers/didaskaloi. They were patient and pedantic. They were the explainers who made everything understandable. 4. The elders, presbyteroi. They were wise great-uncles and aunts. They mediated disputes, moderated, and contributed their experience. 5. Deacons. They were the caretakers of the heart. They distributed food and money and supported the weak. 6. Wandering charismatics. They were mobile powerhouses, moving from group to group, motivating and sometimes healing, normal at the time, not an official miracle. Each role was flexible, no title was binding, no group looked the same, chaos with principles. How did they make decisions? Here too, flexibly, humanely, cleverly, and without greed for money. 1. Through discussion, classic, everyone talked, sometimes there were arguments, but in the end there was always a consensus. 2. Through prayer and lots, trust in God or fate, e.g. Matthias as the 12th apostle. A divine raffle. 3. Through consensus of the elders, experience, and wisdom. That's what the elders brought to the groups. They made decisions with a steady hand. 4. Through charismatic authority. There are also people in the groups who were considered holy or inspired, and they usually led the group. No expensive bishops, no pre-salaries, no dogmatic teaching authorities, and certainly no pope, who came later with all his gold, splendor, and confessionals. The early church in Jerusalem, chaos, heart, and a woman who rocked everything. Imagine Jerusalem around 30 to 50 AD. Narrow streets, bustling markets, heated discussions on every corner. And in the middle of it all, a group of people calling themselves the Way. No magnificent churches, no money machine, just houses, backyards, and workshops. This is where the early church began. Chaotic, radical, human, and incredibly alive. Mary Magdalene, the real power woman. If you think the early Christians were only men, think again. Mary Magdalene was not only spiritually strong, she was clever, courageous, and a born organizer. Some sources suggest that she knew Jesus so well that she understood the message better than many men, and was not afraid to step on other people's toes when necessary. She led meetings, helped the poor and sick, asked intelligent questions, and sometimes probably wanted to gouge Peter's eyes out when he gave another one of his big speeches and acted like the big boss. Peter, the big talker. Peter. A man with heart, courage, and a big mouth. Always at the forefront, always loud, always ready to speak up. But Mary Magdalene didn't really like him. Too impulsive, too proud, too. Peter. Historically, it sounds plausible that Jesus himself said, "If you have questions, go to James, not Peter." James, the silent boss. James, the brother of Jesus, was the man you really asked when it came to decisions. Strict, fair, wise, he moderated disputes, made sure everything remained fair, and held the early church together. Peter was allowed to talk, be loud, sometimes even rant, but in the end, it was James' word that counted. The problem with Paul. Then came Paul, the selfie apostle, franchise founder, and rule inventor. 1. He called himself an apostle without ever having met Jesus. 2. He opened the movement to non-Jews, wrote letters, and defined rules that had nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. 3. He led parts of the early church away from their radical path and subjected them to Roman rule. Among other things, equality was restricted, women were removed from office, deeds lost their importance, and creeds and regulations became more important. 4. He went even further. Through the letter known as Romans 13, it became general doctrine and belief that all human authorities were personally appointed by God. This is a point that stands in total contrast to the teachings of Jesus. To put it humorously, Mary Magdalene would probably have snorted, "Paul, you're turning everything upside down. Our radical path, equality, deeds, charity, everything is falling by the wayside. Welcome to franchise madness." Conclusion for today's Christians: if you think that the church today still reflects the goals of Jesus, take a closer look. Deeds, equality, solidarity, much of this has fallen by the wayside. Paul changed the movement significantly, and the original vision of the early church has shifted. It is worth taking a critical look, amazement included. Practical advice for today: how can we live according to the principles of this movement today? An example from my life. Imagine you check into a hotel. People around you make sure you're comfortable. They wash your clothes, clear the table, serve your food. It's their job, and they get paid for it. But is it necessary to treat them condescendingly? Treat them like human beings with feelings. Look at them, notice and respect them, and talk to them like you would any other person. Be friendly and see them as your equals. Whether it's the cashier at the supermarket, a bus driver, a flight attendant, or anyone else, they are all your fellow human beings. Praise them, thank them, be attentive, even if you're paying for their services. To quote Jesus, even a prostitute is a human being. Actions count, not just the money on the table. Thank you for watching this video. Please like it and subscribe to the channel. But more importantly, do your own research, because what do I know?